Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like MacVoices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is part 2 in our conversation with Glenn Fleishman, the author of 2 new Take Control books. First, Take Control of Zoom Essentials, which is a free book, and Take Control of Zoom 1.0, which is a pay-for book. In the first edition, Glenn explained the differences between those 2 books and some of the things that Zoom itself does, along with Microsoft PowerPoint and Apple's Keynote, to improve your presentations. This time around, Glenn talks about some third-party apps and services and hardware that can not only help you appear better on Zoom, but it can also enhance your presentations even farther. So with that, we're right back to the conversation with Glenn.
And speaking of hybrid things, there are some other tools I want to show because I'm excited about them. So we talked about, virtual cameras have become a big deal in the pandemic because actual cameras are hard to buy. Because the problem, people in Logitech is still seemingly sold out of some of its better webcams, the ones people really like. And I'm thinking, could they really not have fired back up the manufacturing lines yet? Or did they fire them back up and they're selling hundreds of thousands a month? I don't know. But like some of the Logitech cameras, a modern version of it, one that I have, is always sold out whenever I look for it. And in the Logitech site, they're like, we're trying, we really are. And I believe them. And China was shut down for a few months, but they have fired the engines back up in Chinese manufacturing. So I don't know, something funny is going on just with maybe the amount of demand. But this has turned people, like, I know you're using a DSLR right now with an interface. And that was another thing. It was Elgato had their very nice converter. Well, now, have you seen there's the $30 one. I didn't want to tell you this. There's a $30 HDMI to USB converter. Let's see if I have it handy. I'm going to disappear from frame for 1 second.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
There we go. This is, it's just a very, it's being sold by 1,000 different companies online. And it was $40-something when I bought it. Now it's $30. Someone in China developed a chip design, cranked this thing up, and is reselling it through a million different labels. And it always has that same very bland, what does it say, HDMI video capture on it. Someone on Twitter did a tear down of it and looked inside and did signal analysis and said, this is really a good chip. Like, it's a really good chip. The output's really good. And what it is a converter you plug in, because you're using it on your side, but and I have a camera that has a mini HDMI output. So I have a cable that does, mini HDMI. I got a mini HDMI to HDMI adapter. You plug the HDMI side on, and you plug it into USB, and it shows up just like any other webcam to Zoom, to any program you're using. It's just another video input. And this is useful if you have a mirrorless or a DSLR, or you're going to buy one. My mirrorless is, unfortunately, I have a 10-year-old model. You can't get all the interface off screen. So no matter what you do, there's still all this crud all over the place. So I can't use mine unless I crop it and use special software like OBS, Open Broadcast Studio, or a system to do that. So what are the other alternatives for people? And that's a good one, like, $30 thing. And because the more expensive, high quality one disappeared, like I say, Elgato went out of stock on that like days into the pandemic, I think. And it's nice to be able to use, as I'm sure you found out. You can use your lenses. You get that nice depth of field. You look crisper. It's really great to use a DSLR or a mirrorless. But we all have a camera that's really terrific too. It's an iPhone, right? Most of us have an iPhone, and most iPhone cameras are better than the built-in FaceTime cameras on Apple's machines. I think it's the iMac Pro and the new Mac Pro. The new iMac and one of the older ones, iMac Pro, had 1080p. All other FaceTime cameras that Apple has sold on every device is 720p and not a very good camera. I have a MacBook Air 2020. The front-facing camera is terrible. It's terrible in low light. It's grainy. doesn't have good optical characteristics. I think Apple should be slightly embarrassed that they were selling it for so long. Maybe they've turned the leaf with the new iMacs and it's all going to be 1080p from now on. But so I've got a camera off to the side. And the question is, how do you make an iPhone show up as a camera? And you and I were talking before we recorded. There were some open source projects that were underway. There was some outdated software. People are working on it. And then the folks at Reincubate found a market opportunity, as one says, and they developed a software that they're calling Camo, C-A-M-O, which I beta tested. I really like. I wrote a review for TidBITS of it. If you want more detail of the previous, it's now in 1.0.7. It's added a few more features, but it's a virtual camera software. And so it's software that takes an input and produces a stream that to Zoom and BlueJeans and Google Meet and a lot of other stuff looks just like a video camera. So I'm going to switch my video input to this. And so I am using here, I've got my iPhone mounted on a stand above a flat surface. And I'm using it here not from on myself, which is how you could use it. I'm actually using it as a to show something off. So I'm doing a demo. Here, I'll switch and show. I want to show what the interface looks like. Because this is kind of great. So you can see it's got, I can have multiple devices attached. I can choose different lenses on the camera, front and back facing. I can choose resolution. Right now it's only 1080p is the top, but it'll eventually support higher resolution. The free version includes up to 720p. If you pay, it's about $40 a year for a subscription with all the updates. Then you can have 1080p and you'll have other features off to the right here for capture. But I can do things like I can zoom in and I can show you, I could, in this, this is digital zoom, so it's not great, but it's digital zoom on the software. But we know that Zoom, the service, is downgrading video quality. So this isn't actually much worse than zooming in on a 4K image that's being shown over 1080p and then enlarged. A lot of numbers you'd have to do there to figure out the math. It's not too bad, but I can actually show these details of this thing as if it's on a document stand, move it around, and I get a live feed. So I can have this pointed at myself as well. Obviously, here I'll switch back to the. I think the primary use people have thought of it is as a way to have a better webcam for themselves than what they have built in. I like it in this way. This being able to have an external camera with much more control. It's got all these side controls too. So if you're trying to change focus, if you've got something that's in a particularly odd place, you can actually have a manual focus and lock it, which is great for physical objects and demonstrations. So that's one approach to virtual cameras. The other one is this idea of throwing yourself into the frame. So, hey, look, there I am. I'm on this is software called mmhmm. It's mmhmm. I think they should rethink the name of the product because every time I say it, I'm like, mm-hmm. And what it is, lets me drop in, I'm overlaid on a virtual background, and I can create a series of slides in the app and add things. So, oops, I'm trying to add so 1 second here. So I can drop in, say, presentation, and there's the presentation behind me. So I'm got my keynote presentation going, and I could be advancing it, but I can see myself in the picture, right? So you can see me, I can talk, I'm looking at you, and I have this back there. But it's not just that, because it's, excuse me, iTunes is very unhappy with me right now. Let me quit iTunes. I don't know if it's interrupting anything on what you're saying. But I can switch and do things like drop in photos. I can, have these images appear as a sequence of things. I can have different screen shares going on. So I could be demoing different features in different apps. Like I could take, oops, that's not right. Sorry. iTunes is interrupting my Camo usage. I can't do that. All right. So, so I can work, so this is just a way to create kind of a studio effect, right? This is like I'm a presenter in a studio, and you can select among different rooms. So I can be in Tokyo. I can have eerie bubbles going on behind me. There's all these options, pulsating hexagons, if that's what you like. You're a Doctor Who fan. But the idea is here. Let me show you the. I'll share the screen so you can see what's going on the screen. Oops, there it is. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, does it not let me? Is that it? Sorry, it's a little tricky because I think tries not to be shown. Oh, there we go. So you can. I don't know. Can you see? I'm not actually sure what you're seeing right now. Do you see the studio?
Yes, I do.
Oh yeah. So you can select things. You can change cameras, change mics, mic input, and mix it. Change rooms. You can adjust the presenter. I can be larger or smaller. It's very tiny. Move myself around, resize myself, and I can put full screen behind me if I wanted to. But it's just the idea that you're kind of in the picture, and then you're providing something that's more interactive for people. So it's not just flat slides; it's actually a human being there talking, and you get to see them. I think it's an interesting option. It's gotten some attention, I think, because people are trying to find different ways to present that aren't just slides. That right now it's in beta. You have to get an invitation from someone. If someone emails me, notify me. I can send you. I think I have 5 invitations available right now. I do, so I can send you a beta invitation if you want. If you're a watcher here, and then the other option. Let me come back out of that, back into this. Zoom, as I said, they keep adding new options for people. They have added something that's in beta called Slides as virtual background, and it looks like honestly a direct ripoff. Although I don't think the idea is necessarily unique, and it lets you have something like inside of Zoom. Oh, that's weird. Oh, hold on a second. It's
beta.
Oh, beta. No, you know what it is? I'm presenting in Keynote. What it does is, so I select share screen, I select the advanced tab and click slides as virtual background. And you have to be updated, by the way, folks. They released it a few weeks ago, but not everybody's software automatically updates. So you select a Keynote presentation. Oh, it still doesn't like it. Let's see if I can, it essentially exports a Keynote presentation or a PowerPoint presentation. It exports it as it's not like it is beta and is broken at the moment. But you select a slide deck, it opens PowerPoint or Keynote, it exports it essentially as a PDF deck, and then when you're inside of Zoom, you have some minimal controls, and you can put yourself in the corner just like So the slide is the main thing. You're on screen, and you're in an integrated view. So you don't have to. It doesn't look like a screen sharing view to other participants, and you have the same controls and focus that you have normally when you're doing a presentation. So it's just another option, and it's free because it's part of Zoom, and it's available to free tier users as well as paid ones. So I find this whole combination of things, it can be a little confusing to sort through, which is why I wrote a book to try to walk people through all the options. But you have a lot of different ways to add interactivity and to control what you're doing now. And I think Zoom continues to focus on it, as well as these things like Camo and There's OBS that I mentioned earlier, Open Broadcasting Studio or Service, for it's called, which is free, downloadable, open source free software that lets you mix a lot of different media sources, and with a free plugin someone's developed for Mac and for Windows, you can export that as video, a virtual camera as well, and use it in Zoom. So I can run OBS, I can have multiple cameras that I'm feeding in, I can have screen captures, audio, all kinds of stuff. OBS is built kind of for gamers, so people doing Twitch streaming and other things, they've really, I think, shaped what that's like. But it's great for this because you can take any media of any kind, static, audio, video, screen, including network-based resources. It's wild. And like most open source software, it has a million choices. The interface is a little confusing, but if you master the basics, you can use OBS, again, for free. And because, excuse me, not all open source projects are available free, this is available free, and it gives you very powerful control over bringing in lots of different sources to mix into one thing you show inside of Zoom.
Are you getting everything you can from MacVoices? MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard delivers the best articles from the web on how to do more with your Apple gear. From quick tips to more in-depth articles, MacVoices Magazine is updated daily with what's new and useful, skipping the news and hype to provide you with actionable information. You can always use the web link, but the Flipboard app delivers a superior viewing experience. Flipboard for iPhone and iPad are both free in the App Store, and MacVoices Magazine is free in Flipboard and on the web. Or check out macvoices.com/magazine. A couple things, Glenn, that I want to make sure. First of all, I might want to make sure that I remind people that if you didn't see it, I interviewed the CEO of Camo on MacVoices a couple weeks ago, and great guy. He sort of tells the Camo story, explains how it all works, and I've been just blown away by it completely. I think it's great. I've tried some of the other alternatives that turn your iPhone into a camera, and sometimes they work, and sometimes they work well, sometimes they don't work at all. Camo, at least in my experience so far, has been bulletproof. It does everything it says it wants to do or can do and more. So that's a good thing. One thing I haven't heard you touch on, and maybe it's not exactly germane to the meeting concept, but Zoom inside itself will let you broadcast Zoom meetings to Facebook or YouTube.
Yeah, if you've got, it's a little confusing because I think you have to have a paid flavor. I know some people have had trouble doing it. Yeah. So you have to have a paid tier, but it's a great option because it means you can extend what you're doing. Zoom has a webinar. It's very interesting, their business model, because they have several products that overlap, and Zoom has a webinar product that's very expensive. It's meant really for, I think, very high-end purposes, but it's got a lot, where you're charging a large amount of money for a conference per attendee, because the pricing is quite extraordinary. But I think the idea is that they're offering a bulletproof tool with live technical support for you and a huge number of feedback tools. So if that's not what you need, then using the fact that they allow you to use the main Zoom software to broadcast, and so you could reach a big audience. You can, and again, because you're broadcasting, you can actually, it supports the standard, I'm blanking on it, whatever the RTP, whatever the standard is for streaming. You can feed that into OBS because everything can be fed into OBS, and OBS works with all of the major streaming things too. So you could even capture a Zoom stream, by the way, on your machine and use OBS to stream if you don't want to use Zoom's built-in controls, which require a paid account. But it's a great idea. So you can have people tune in via YouTube and some of the other services they support. They could be watching you live there. They could be sending you questions via texting or something else if there's feedback and they're not in the Zoom session. But you don't have to have a Zoom license for 10,000 people or even 200 people, because the basic paid license lets you have up to 100 people in a meeting. That can be a little unwieldy sometimes to manage, unless, again, you have a co-host or other people helping you. Being able to broadcast out of Zoom with, maybe you have a panel of people, and it's something like you might do. You'd have a panel of people you convened in Zoom, and you want to push what you're discussing into something other people can see in real time, and then also have an archived video of it as well. And Zoom has robust recording controls too. If you have the paid account at any tier, you can do cloud recording, and Zoom optionally can record several different views at once. So you can record the gallery view, main speaker view, slideshows, and active speaker view as well. And when that's going on, and then later you can download that video and mix it into something that's more robust because you have all these views. So Zoom makes that possible as well.
Yeah, and that's what I've been using to do MacVoices Live on Tuesday nights.
Oh, that's great.
On Facebook. So and we've only had one problem with it. There was an issue as we record this last week, but other than that, it's been pretty darn simple. Just hit a button, fill out a couple things. Now you have to, obviously, like everything else, you have to set it up first. But when it's time to go, you hit the button, go, and it's up and running. And you're right. It feels very comfortable to be doing it inside Zoom with all its tools that it had up to this point. And now you've just shown us, some new things that can be done, and you can be sending out to Facebook or YouTube real easily with no additional expense.
There's one option I haven't shown, which is Ecamm Live, which is a subscription service, and you need to have the $25, $26 a month flavor to have virtual camera output from it. But it's a very robust tool. It's designed for people who do, it's designed for influencers, but anybody doing studio video work at home, really, I think it actually is high quality enough in any kind of studio work where you're doing, your own digital recording. And like OBS, it lets you mix lots of different sources together and do very sophisticated things. Now, in the past, Ecamm Live's focus has been on, people doing broadcasts of all different kinds who need control over it and sometimes are streaming to multiple different platforms at once. But if you're doing something hybrid where you need to be recording and mixing streams and you want to push it into a Zoom meeting or into other meetings, Ecamm Live is like yet another alternative. It's expensive. If you're a year subscription is, it's a lot more than free, but it's so much easier to use than OBS. So if you had a, excuse me, if you had a special project, you could subscribe for 1 month to Ecamm Live, produce something, have an event or whatever, push all this out, have high quality recordings, stream in every media, and be able to use Zoom as a component of it. So, or use it as a component in Zoom, rather. You can push it into a Zoom meeting. So I think what people may encounter is they may be a little overwhelmed by the number of choices that are available now. But I think, here, let me grab, I don't know if I can get to it. I'm in my basement office with things everywhere, but I was going to say, like, using a Camo, rather, it's such a lovely, simple alternative if you don't have a great webcam or you're in a situation where, I don't know, you want to have the camera set up differently from where your laptop is. There's all these different situations where I think being able to have an external camera that's higher quality than the webcams that are available are really useful. And being able to mix yourself, I shouldn't be so taken about it. It's going to look super gimmicky. Like, in a few, this is going to look maybe hilarious in a few years. We're all going to be like, yeah, they were using mmhmm, and it looks, yeah, all right, no, I can tell what era that's from. But I really do like the idea that we're trying to humanize ourselves in these meetings. And so anything that puts us in the picture and isn't just bullet points or gives people a crisper look at us, like we're not dimly lit and static is all over our face or the background is all blurry or flashing, there's all this terrible camera stuff. Anything that makes us look better, like more, like not our faces. I don't mean like you can do that in Zoom too. I mean more like that people are looking at us and they're not distracted by the technological failings, low quality or lighting or anything else. I think it makes it a better conversation. It's more like being with people. And that's why I'm excited about these options more so than like, hey, it's a cool thing and you can look like you're in a TV studio. That can be useful, but it's also, hey, they can see your face. People can see your face while you're talking. That I think is kind of awesome.
Well, and of course, this audience, you, me, we're all geeks. So we love playing with this stuff exactly. And seeing what you can do. But unlike you, the more that you can get just the set it up, click go and do it is even better. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting here thinking, that a lot of folks, me included, you forget about all the cameras that you probably have exactly. In one device or another. I've got a couple GoPros sitting around that $40 HDMI thing converter would probably work with. You might have an old camcorder that you could put up on a tripod, and it's going to be probably light years better. Even if it's not a great camcorder, it's probably going to be better than what you're doing now. So
I don't know if this will black out, but this is where the camera is located. I've got a tripod that's mounted to the wall. This is the advantage of being in a basement. I can just drill in the wall, and I have a stand there, and it's just inexpensive. It's like a $28 iPhone, it's a swing arm stand, super cheap and just mounted on my wall. And I can put it up and down and move it around using essentially it's basically a $27 converter to give me a document camera using my iPhone. And that's really handy to have.
Sure.
So I didn't spend a fortune. Like, I didn't go out and buy $1,000 camera to do this. Like I'm using $40 a year software and a $28 stand. And I feel like I have, especially, so one of the workshops I've attended was a letterpress workshop before I taught mine. And the instructor she said, I'm not very sophisticated. She had 3 cameras set up. She had a camera pointing to her letterpress. She had a camera on a piece of glass where her iPad was pointed down, running the Zoom client so people could see her layout with her hands. And she had a laptop that she was using to present from. And she was switching among 3. And I'm like, you're not sophisticated. Don't tell me that, because she did a 3-camera live setup across 2 hours. And it was fantastic because she needed different views. You needed to see, that's why I have, and it's kind of like this. If I was doing a demo when I do a tour of my tiny type museums, I'll use this view. Oh, so sorry, that's got the got to turn off background and filters though. It's one flaw because I've got virtual background on. So if I was doing a tour of the Tiny Type Museum, I would do this, right? Because I would have the camera over there and I'd be able to zoom in and say, oh, well, this is a monotype supercaster matrix, and I could be showing this off while I'm still standing here and looking at you in the camera, so people looking at me in the if I have a second camera going or whatever, and then I can switch back without having to get up and move around or readdress things. I do have to turn my fake background back on though if I want. I got my wonderful green screen. Anyway, so I think there's just a lot of flexibility for people who don't necessarily think of themselves as technology geeks or whatever. I worry that they may get turned off by this a little bit, but it's actually very simple to set many of these things up. And once you set up, you just use it indefinitely. You're not having to constantly tweak it and reinvent the wheel.
And I'm terribly tempted to go down that discussion of how much more efficient video conferencing is, and I know it's not the same as shaking hands with someone. Well, if we ever get to shake hands again, but of being in the same room with someone. But the efficiencies are amazing because you don't have the travel time. Yeah. You can share documents. You can share even more powerful presentation style things than you can, because even if somebody comes to my office in the before time, they still had to bring their laptop. They still had to make sure we could connect it to the big screen, and then run it and make sure they're connected to the Wi-Fi. Here, you don't have any of that. Just sit down and say, "Hey, Glenn, let me show you this." Click over to the next screen, and boom, you're there. So this is why this is why I love the idea that you've written this book, because we're all out there struggling. Some of us are struggling. Some of us are experimenting. Other people are just throwing up their hands and saying, "I'll use the basics. It's good enough."
Yeah.
And if you want to be able to distinguish yourself, then go get Glenn's book and start doing some of these little tricks, and you're going to wow 98% of the people that you're communicating with.
Well, this is what I'm hearing from folks in the field too. Is I was talking to one fellow who'd been using mmhmm in beta, and has to do a lot of presentations to clients or to prospective clients. And he said he could have all this stuff, all these different videos and things, all preset. He's in one environment. Zoom is using mmhmm as its camera input, so he's not there clicking screen share and selecting. Zoom could improve how it manages media. Right now, it's kind of a mess because it was designed for I'm doing a presentation, I'm showing an image. So mmhmm is designed around the idea that you can have all kinds of different media. You can have a movie you want to show, and images, and a slide deck that's live, and so forth, and they just appear as options. So I'm in the. I'll show you again just because I think it's interesting here. If it will. So I'm clicking among items in. It doesn't have enough different items, but I'm clicking among items in mmhmm. And if I dropped a movie in there, I'd just be able to play the movie just by clicking. And that was the thing that the fellow I spoke to said. It's such an efficient way to have tons of stuff at his fingertips. So a client says, "Well, can you do this? Or does the product do this?" And he goes, "Oh," and he clicks a single thing. He's not, "Oh yeah, let me show you. I gotta," and bring it up and then, "Oh, the screen share, now that your views change and it's taken." It's like, no, it's all in the camera. It's all in one place, all in one app. So we don't know how much mmhmm is going to charge, by the way, yet. This is all still in beta. It's in version 0.21, but 0.31 or something. So that's why I'm recommending a mix of tools like OBS and like tools that have a fee attached, because for some people, $0 is the most they can spend. I talk to folks in academia who that is their budget is $0, and other folks, $40 a year or a $30 app is a great way to enhance what they're doing right now.
And I think it's important to realize too that the expectations are going to rise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, audio, in the early days of podcasting, you could get away with a lot of things, and not anymore. Now somebody's going to turn you off 30 seconds after they start. And so, our expectations are going to go up. And if you're in business for this kind of thing, for sales and all, those expectations are going to be there, because someone is going to beat your time if you don't have and start to adopt these things. So I know, there are people out there that don't want to get too much in the geeky part. Fine. Go find a high school kid or a geek that wants to play with this stuff and can, help you get it set up. Well, but the first step is going to get Glenn's book. No
Yeah,
question.
I'm doing the book because I've thought about doing consulting on this, but I haven't quite figured out how to do it because I sort of don't want to charge people. I'm like, I got a book and I know, I was telling you before we were calling that a professor of mine from decades ago called because he's teaching online. He's very technologically sophisticated and he just wanted to run through things. And I spent some time with him because I was curious what kinds of things he wanted to present, what excuse me, what elements he needed to present in a graphic design course. And he'd already bought some tools and was open to others. But he was like, who do I know who knows? Well, Glenn just wrote a book on Zoom. I think he probably has the advice. So I'm hoping there'll be people who become Zoom concierges or Zoom teachers and actually help people go through and learn some of these options. Because it is a little like riding a bicycle. Excuse me. A lot of smoke in the air here right now. I say like riding a bicycle because some technology you're always learning and you kind of forget and there's a lot of detail and you're managing it. I think a lot of these tools, you have to learn like 3 things. And once you know those 3 things, you could just use it indefinitely. Like Camo, you just have to launch the software on the phone or iPad and on your Mac and select it in Zoom and then you're done. I mean, you don't have to spend a half an hour or 2 hours mastering details. It's not complicated, but it gives you such a boost. So you just need someone to show it to you or find a video. It's like, okay, this might be a big help for this thing I want to do. Or my camera is really crummy or the lighting is really bad. It's just an iPhone is so good at especially the back-facing cameras, but also the front-facing one in low light conditions, which a lot of us have, or mixed light conditions in our home.
Yeah. So it's Take Control of Zoom Essentials and Take Control of Zoom version 1.1. Both can be available, or had, I should say, from takecontrolbooks.com. And they will get you up and running with Zoom and then take you to the next level and even a couple levels above that. It's an exciting time, Glenn, to see this particular market develop as rapidly as it has, and with tools that are pretty approachable if someone wants to spend a little time with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's never a good time for a pandemic to happen, but it's a great time for us to be able to cope with it when robust video conferencing tools like Zoom exist. I just think even 3 or 5 years ago, it would have been an even bigger disaster than it's been. There would have been so much discontinuity in every way. So I'm grateful that we're at this point of technological development, and people are putting in millions of hours of person hours of time to improve it right now. I can't imagine the amount of development effort going in across every one of these 7 or 8 major video conferencing tools, all these external things trying to make them better, all the hardware that's coming. There is at least it's not a silver lining, but it's more like there's an incredible outgrowth of response to this need that's going on, and that's great. And that's what's feels good to be part of. Is I feel like there's always that, how are you part of the solution? I'm like, okay, my way of being part of the solution here is to try to help people understand how to use the tool that is letting them remain part of this sort of skein of work and life and school. And it feels like something actually useful in the midst of all this. I can't cure cancer or develop a coronavirus vaccine, but I can write about Zoom and share the Zoom Essentials book for people who need it.
Well, I know. Thank you on behalf of a lot of people for the free version, and thank you even more for those of us who want to take Zoom to that next level and make ourselves more competitive in our business environments. So it makes a huge difference.
Well, thank you, and thank you for letting me go on about all these interesting tools.
No. But I also want to ask you go on one more time about where you folks can find you, because you do a few other things, 1 or 2, other than just do Zoom.
Well, at the moment, I'm packing these tiny type museum I keep talking about, where I'll do a shot of it again. This is the that I've got to, hold on, I've got to do 2 things. This is when I wish there was I need a keyboard shortcut for turning off virtual background. This is this project I've been working on for almost 2 years. I've mentioned in previous podcasts, this is one of 2 drawers in a neat little cabinet. I'm packing them now for the first, we're making about 100 of these total, and it's all, these are all aspects of printing history that cross almost a couple hundred years of development of printing technology back in the analog days, and there's some digital components too that are coming. there'll be a little USB drive in the middle there that'll have some films and other resources as well. But that's what I've been spending a lot of my time doing. If you go to tinytypemuseum.com, you can find my details about the project and pictures and links to some photo galleries of what it's about. But it's a preservation project of taking a couple centuries worth of this history, putting it in one place with things you can actually touch and teach from. So that's, like I say, almost 2 years into it. And finally, because after we had some shelter in place and other limitations in Washington State, that opened up in July. The person I was working with on the cases was able to finish some pieces, and we're finally going to ship these things out to early buyers and still have a few left that I can make available to people who are interested in this kind of stuff.
Well, that's great. That's great. And of course, folks can find you on Twitter. And I'll have links in the show notes to everything else that Glenn wants you to know about. Glenn, thank you so much. I appreciate the time, especially the demos, to give us an idea of what Zoom can do beyond what we thought it could do.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. And I'm always eager for feedback from readers about that's how I keep improving the books is people say, hey, why isn't this in the book? And then we add it in.
Great. Well, come back anytime. You're always welcome. And don't wait for me to call you.
All right. I know where to find you.
You do. You do.
Thanks, Chuck.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. Yeah, you know where to find me too, right here talking to Glenn about some of his great Take Control books, along with all the other great Take Control authors, and a whole lot of other things. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.